Mondays. We are so
So
happy
happy.
that you are here with us. I don't know if we're having any. Okay, I think we're okay. If you're only seeing two things here, but okay. Anyways, welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We were
Thank you.
experiencing some technical difficulties before we went on, but I think we're okay now. So put in the chat if you can hear us and see us just fine. I just want to see from all of you if everything is good. You
And
put a
of course,
one.
tell us where you're coming from.
Yes. Okay. All right. I think everything's okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes. As you're saying, you're putting a one, definitely tell us where you're watching from so we can see that. I actually I'm not able to see the chat right now. So you might have to call out the places where they're watching from, Dr. White, because I'm not
Yeah,
quite able to see that. And we
I
want to
see.
know.
Sandra Turner says that she can hear us just fine. Thank
Okay,
you
great.
for that, Sandra. And where are you coming from? I see Janice Ferguson, so that's great as well. Yeah, good to see you.
Yes. Well, that is.
And Janice is coming to us from Belize.
Oh,
Oh,
we have, and that's wonderful. Yeah, we have like when we have programming on throughout the week and on Sabbath as well. I see Belize quite a bit, so it may just be her, or we have others that watch as well. So that's great. That is
we may,
great.
we may very well need to take a visit.
Yes, yes. I haven't been to Belize, but I've been to the neighboring country, Honduras, where my family is from. So I've been very close.
You're from
So.
Honduras?
Oh, yes, on my mom's side, my great grandfather was from Honduras. Yeah, so on a little
Yeah.
island, Roatan, little
You know, I'm
island, actually in the
Panamanian.
Caribbean Ocean. Go ahead.
I'm Panamanian.
Yes, I did know that. I did know that. So that's cool. But you probably know some Spanish. Like, you don't know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
See, I don't know any Spanish except what I've learned by living because I'm from California and taking some classes in school. But yeah, I
Uh,
wish I could be fluent. Wish I could be fluent. But we are happy that all of you are here with us today. We're continuing our discussion on depression, which it's such a huge topic. This might be our fourth program on depression. I feel
I
like we
believe.
did I think we did two on the hits, and then last week started talking about some psychotherapies that's used for depression, and then today is our fourth one, and I believe this is going to be our fourth and our last.
Mhm.
But definitely put in the chat, questions that you have that you want to ask about depression and like how therapy can help with that, because we're always encouraging you, our viewers, that if you're experiencing anything that you feel is affecting your life and your mindset in a negative way, to definitely reach out to a local mental health professional that can assist you. That's always our goal. That's always our push. And so, yeah, so we encourage you to do that. But last week we started to talk about some, well, I say some psychotherapies, but I feel like we really only covered CBT. And we talked a little bit. I know you mentioned your book, we talked about that, and today we're going to talk about just a couple of more therapies that that therapists use, that mental health professionals use, that can assist with depression. But we're also we're going to spend not a ton of time with that because we did a lot last week, but we're really going to focus a lot on actually how medication could be beneficial uh, for people as well. And so we're going to talk about some of that. So any questions you have about either one of those, we want you to put that in the chat. So, Dr. White, I wanted to talk about this last week, but time, because our hour goes by so fast and so quickly, and we get great questions from all of you. And I wanted to talk about it. But one of my favorites, I like a lot of modalities, but one of my favorites is solution focused therapy, because it's so positive, and it's just the therapist doesn't spend a lot of time with like past issues or family of origin issues, but it's all about helping the client, really the client has solutions within them. And so the therapist is helping you recognize that the solutions that have worked for you in the past, and that helping you to be able to revisit that and to help you feel empowered enough to go back to those solutions to help you as you're going through some issues that are causing unhappiness and depression. One of my favorite things, I'm sure you're familiar, of course, Dr. White, with the miracle question, right? Like a therapist, if you come into therapy and a therapist is using solution focused therapy, one of the things that they will ask you is they will say, if you went to sleep tonight and a magic wand was waved over your bed, and you woke up the next day and everything is the way you wanted it to be, how would you know? Like, how would you wake up and be like, oh, this is positive in my life, or this is the way I want this to be, and this relationship is good? Like, how would you know? And so that's starting to allow the client to see, they can see that and begin to find or see the solutions to their problem that is causing sadness or depression in their life. And then the therapist works with you, the client, to help you take small steps. It's really a brief therapy, maybe 10 sessions. So small steps every week so you can meet the goals. As you're finding the solution, meet little goals each week so you can meet them. And then the client is just feeling so empowered by being able to do that. And so solution focused therapy is one of the therapies that can be used to help with depression. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, that teaser on solution focus.
Mm-hmm.
I love it when things are very practical. Like,
Right.
how many times have you argued with a person, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then pulled back and reflected and say, hold on a second, what is the outcome we're actually wanting? What is the actual solution we want to move towards? And what you see as when you look at the dynamics often taking place in a group, it is
Right.
really easy to get distracted with, well, this person's offending me, or why did you say it to me this way? As
Right.
opposed to what is the solution? How about what if we
Mm-hmm.
look past, what if we look past feelings and insults and, we actually kind of honed in on, no, what's the actual solution? And the other issue is sometimes problems become so much our focus. Again, we lose sight of what is the actual solution that we want. We start to think so much about what we don't want that we lose sight of what we actually do. And so therapies like solution focused can
Mm-hmm.
be intentional about helping you get back to know, what do you actually want? How about we stop paying so much energy and attention and time with what
Right.
we don't want, and let's
Right.
orient it to what we do want.
Right.
And that you can already imagine that can be incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, what's so encouraging is that for by using this modality, it's like, because they're just taking very small steps, like they're seeing, just when I say a small step towards their solution each week, it's just empowering because they're seeing themselves being able to do something to make a change in their situation. So it's a very positive, forward looking solution. You're looking to the future. It doesn't spend. What I do like about solution focused therapy is how it doesn't spend a lot of time in the past. And there's other theories that I like as well, that they, spend a ton of time in your past and your family of origin and your childhood, and those things are good too. But this is very forward looking, which I think is very positive.
No, well
So
said. Well
I
said.
am not able to see the chat right now. So if there's, I don't know if there's questions, and maybe you can.
Yeah,
Um,
okay. Yeah, we got Idaho. We got a shout out from Idaho. We got South Carolina. We
okay.
have Massachusetts. We've got Franklin, New Hampshire. We have Atascadero, California. Love that.
What?
Love
What?
that.
That's where I'm from. Where I'm from, Paso Robles. I was raised. What's
That's
because I
Trudy Munoz is shouting you out. Trudy Munoz.
Wow, Trudy. Hi. Welcome. It's like I know that if it says Atascadero, I know who it is because it's not a big area. But yes, welcome,
Well, it's
welcome, welcome,
funny, it's
welcome.
funny because the Trastevere is also famous for its state hospital. So,
Uh, you would know it for that. No, and I have many friends that have worked at that state hospital. So
oh
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
as a psychiatrist, you would know that.
Oh yeah,
So
oh
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know if there's any questions or comment just on what we've covered so far, but
No,
I'm thinking
no,
that
no
okay,
questions so far. No
okay.
questions so far. But yeah, so
I think
we go ahead.
I just wanted to say I think a lot of I think a lot of questions, and I'm going to pitch it to you that I get a lot is, how do you know? And because you're the psychiatrist, and maybe we should clarify that too. Like, I'm a marriage and family therapist. Dr. White is a psychiatrist, so he's a doctor and he can prescribe medication for mental health issues and things of that nature. I cannot, but I do a lot of referrals to psychiatrists because that's what we do when we feel like our client will benefit from seeing a psychiatrist and to assess them. But I get a lot of questions where people are asking, how do you know when, going on medication is the right thing for that
Okay.
person?
No, good question. So hey, so what a wonderful intro to
Yeah.
transition over to medication. Wasn't there one more therapy you wanted to talk about?
It was narrative therapy, but you can answer that question and we can go backwards a little bit.
Yes, 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 ma'am. Um, so basically, you're going to develop your plan in concert with your mental health team. And it's your mental health team. So whether it's your psychiatrist, therapist, you're going to get issued a diagnosis. And what's interesting about what I know that we do as psychiatrists and what we do very uniquely is formulate to get a formulation for a patient. And this hopefully does not become a lost art. But that's where, in particular, a psychiatrist will assess you from a biological standpoint, a psychological standpoint, understand the environment that everything is taking place in, and explain, hey, this is what I'm seeing. And so you can see that's so much more than just a diagnosis. It's an understanding of the core issues that a person is dealing with. And from that platform, from establishing a formulation, then say, okay, well, these are the recommended strategies that we want to put in place to address the issues. So it's at that point that you would say, okay, well, this would be the role for therapy. This would be the role for some logical strategic interventions like, hey, we got to set some boundaries. We got to notify CPS. We got to do X, Y, or Z.
Right.
And then, of course, there's, okay, well, what role should medications then play? So function is a big deal when you're trying to when you're trying to put in place a treatment plan, because ultimately you're trying to restore function. So how much is the person not functioning? That's really going to determine the various measures that you use and employ. So obviously we mentioned therapy, but sometimes that's not enough,
Right.
because to do the therapeutic thing, sometimes you need a level of motivation that biologically is just not there. So
Right.
then you can see where medications can come in and play a role to adjust, the neurotransmitter flow and thereby modulate the communicating that's taking place in various parts of your brain in order to get you activated to where you can then execute some of the strategic recommendations from whether it's a therapist, a coach, or what have you. The what's being recommended by this mental health team that's consulting you. So, how do you know if you need medications? It's going to come down to how disrupted your ability to function is, and how important therapy is versus medications. So sometimes there are therapeutic approaches that may have been recommended that are not working.
Right.
Okay, and especially if this is severe mental health issues to where maybe things were so severe you had to be admitted to the hospital.
Mhm.
Well, in the hospital setting, there's a tremendous amount of pressure that the state be as efficient as possible.
Mhm.
And as a result of that, um, especially given the 24/7 monitoring that's taking place, that's a pretty optimal setting to utilize
Mhm.
a psychopharmacological strategy because you're being monitored now 24/7. So if there's a side effect or if there's a problem, that's like the best setting for it to be
Mhm.
detected um,
Mhm.
and adjusted. And you're seeing that psychiatrist on a daily basis. Most inpatient settings that I know, a
Right.
psychiatrist is going to be seeing you on a daily basis. So adjustments can be made quickly,
Mhm.
you can be stabilized, and then you can be transitioned to have the care continue in outpatient.
Mhm.
But you could see that psychopharmacology is going to be a key part of an inpatient stay. What were you going to say, sis?
Well, I was just going to say a lot of the therapies that therapists use, if someone does need to be on medication, it is I want to say very, very difficult for a therapist to be able to work with that client because either, it emotionally they need to be on something to be able to even grasp what the therapist is trying to help them with. And so that's when a lot of referrals go that I do to a psychiatrist. A lot of referrals happen then, and then the the clients that I have seen in those type of situations have been in a hybrid. They've been on medication, working with the psychiatrist, and also coming in and talking with myself or another therapist. A lot of situations, a lot of people do that, have that situation where again they're having a hybrid. They're on medication and they're talking to the therapist. I want to say another thing that I deal with as far as medication goes and with therapy, working with people is, they'll start a medication. And again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't, do anything with that because that's not my space or my training. But they come in and say, hey, I went and saw the psychiatrist. He put me on these meds and I feel worse or and that's when I would refer them back to the psychiatrist to tinker and work with the medications because as psychiatrists, as you know, you guys have a huge toolbox. So I think it's very important for our viewers to know that if they see a doctor, a psychiatrist, a medical doctor, and the doctor or the psychiatrist puts them on medication, that the medication is not supposed to make them feel worse. Um,
Well,
and I know
well,
there's side effects, but
right, right.
it's not supposed to make them
Well,
feel.
well, the first and foremost, we would want the viewers to know it is so priority. It is priority number one is to communicate any dissatisfaction to your health team and let them know, hey, this is happening. So antidepressants, for example, are known at times to cause an increase in thoughts of self-harm. So that can be that's a black box warning that at times occurs
Right,
with antidepressant psychotropics. And so, of course, the typical warning is let us know if that's happening so that things can be changed.
right.
So you can imagine trying to predict what a given medication is going to do in a person's body when there are over 7 billion people on the planet. Like, how is it going to behave in this particular person?
Right.
So, one of the tools that have been that have been developed to address that issue is there is some genetic testing that can take place at times
Mm-hmm.
to determine if a person's genetic makeup will work with a given medication or not work with a given medication. The poor
Mm-hmm.
man's way of doing that at times is, checking, hey, do you have a family history of this condition? And do you know if there's a medication that's responding well with that family member? And sometimes that can be a clue that the person may respond well or not, given how their family member responded to the medication. Perhaps they have a genetic predisposition for a given response. But the bottom line is there's a tool that can check genetic predisposition for a given response to certain medications.
Right.
You talked about feeling worse. So, one of
Mhm.
the things that we will do with choosing a medication is choosing a medication based on its side effect profile if we want a patient sometimes to benefit from something. So, for example,
Mhm.
there are medications that may cause a person to feel a little sleepy. So, guess what? We may prescribe that medication at night, especially if the person's having trouble with sleep. So yeah, there are medications at times that might increase appetite.
Mhm.
So sometimes with depression, a person loses their appetite. And
Mhm.
so, how advantageous can it be to prescribe something that actually is helping enhance their appetite? So
Mhm.
sometimes, so there are other medications where it's sort of a side effect where they may feel a little bit more activated. Well, in depression, it's characterized with leaden paralysis and not wanting to move and really having low energy. You may want to choose a medication that is a bit more activating,
Mhm.
so that they feel a little bit more energetic. So what I'm saying is you can match the medication and its side effect profile to the needs of the given patient, and that's
Mhm.
why that history is so important. That's why that formulating is so critical. So that you can then match the right therapy to the right problem and drive towards the best outcome.
Right. No, yeah, that's perfect. I think there's a good question here. How do you help a person with medication compliance um, to prevent self harm? So where someone has, I'm assuming they're supposed to be on their meds, but they're not taking their meds, and because that, I hope I'm not putting too much into this question, but they're not on their meds, and so it's the possibility that they could self harm.
You
How do you
know,
encourage them to take their meds?
as far as medication compliance, this is sort of the holy grail. This is sort of the ultimate challenge that we have as practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
First, it's convincing a person that this medication might be helpful to them,
Mm-hmm.
um, because a lot of people resist that. And then it's medication compliance. Like, never mind side effects, because sometimes side effects will lead a person to just stop taking them. But even despite that,
Which I have to say, which is very dangerous to just cold turkey stop taking meds without working with your doctor or psychiatrist.
because especially after you've gotten accustomed to a medication,
Right.
stopping it can cause sometimes serious discomfort all the way
Right.
to serious medical concerns, and that's why
Right.
you want to work in concert with your mental health team.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the things you leverage to get medication compliance is get a nice, strong therapeutic alliance. So it's
Mm-hmm.
important that the patient feel that you are both competent and that you care, and that you're making recommendations to the
Mm-hmm.
best of your ability in their best interest. And then the other thing is explaining the role of the medications in the overall strategy,
Right.
so that it's really important that people not overestimate what the medications are going to deliver. And it's critical to see the comprehensive approach that works the best in effectively addressing depression. And so understanding that the meds can have a role, but it's a limited role. That needs to be paired
Mm-hmm.
with pretty aggressive activity, your physical health. What is it that
Yeah.
you're consuming? Great partnership with our medical
Mm-hmm.
colleagues to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that there are not diagnoses that are underlying the depression.
Right.
Okay. And or metabolic deficits, sometimes vitamin deficits, or sometimes toxic poisonings. And this is why we talked about those 10 hits. There can be a number of things that are underlying the depression. Well, it's critical that the mental health team address that and make sure that they've clarified what is the constellation and makeup of this person's depression. So let's make sure that we're hitting and addressing all those hits and not just hyper focusing on medications.
Right. It's something that I'm stealing this from you. said it before, but I feel like, I mean, we've kind of covered throughout the 4-part series that we're doing on depression. We've covered lifestyle, with the, I mean, there's lifestyle within those 10 hits. We've talked about psychotherapy, talk therapy, and now we're talking about medication. And I feel like, um, and tell me if you agree, but like just when you're looking at depression and from a mental health standpoint and how to treat it, I feel like a full court press, which is your term, is a great way to, is a great way to approach it. So you're looking at lifestyle things you can do. I mean, that's exercise, that's getting proper rest, um, eating a healthy, preferably a plant-based diet. I mean, that's all helpful. Getting a therapist that you connect with, that you can talk to, and also, if needed, medication as well. It's just like it's a whole, and everybody's situation is not where they need all three. I don't want to say, well, they don't need all three components. Some may not need the medication, but some definitely do. But definitely the lifestyle and talking to a therapist or a mental health professional, these are, the things that you can do to treat depression.
Here,
These are all
here,
things we've talked about.
here's something I often share with my patients.
Sorry. People are saying they can't hear me. Tell me if you can hear me better. They're saying get closer to the mic. Is that better? Put a 1 in the chat.
You were sounding great. I think we got,
Somebody. Okay.
no,
Okay. I'm gonna
I'm
make sure
joking.
they can hear me.
I'm joking. No, thank you guys for the feedback because we want to be optimal, of course.
Right.
What I wanted to say is I often share with my patients that one way to think of depression is like it's this, 600-pound gorilla that's gripped a person, right? And so it's gripped you. And we talked about a wide range of things to try to get that gorilla to loosen its grip. And so we mentioned medications at times can be one of them. And unfortunately, sometimes when people feel that benefit from the medication, they relax. They relax and they're like, okay, I'm good. It's like they stay within the vicinity of that gorilla. No, if it loosens its grip, run. And in this situation, it's employ these other things. So you're eating right, okay? You get that nice walking routine.
Right.
You need to run because medications will often, after a while, they'll wane a little in their effectiveness. And if you're right there, that's when that gorilla just grips you again. And so that's why the goal is to really run from that. And so when you feel some benefit from the medications, you leverage that into employing these other methods that we keep mentioning: diet, lifestyle, sunlight, all those various other things.
Right. I think it's let's see. Michelle Watson Grant is asking, is it mostly chemical imbalances that require medication? What tests would be done to check for chemical imbalances?
Yeah, we mentioned that before. There is no serotonin deficiency that you can detect based on a test. So that's not how it's determined. Depression is largely a clinical diagnosis. So you look at the symptomatology, and the research has been done linking depression to a certain symptom presentation. So that's why we talk about this criteria. And based on that criteria, we say, okay, well, based on this person having these various symptoms, it's likely they have depression. Now,
I don't know if she's asking like if there's a chemical imbalance, like how do you know when there is a chemical imbalance?
well, because it's often said that the role of antidepressants, for example, is to balance the neurotransmitter imbalance, in the brain. And I'm saying there's no way to detect that imbalance. For a lot of conditions, you can actually identify, okay, well, if you're low in potassium, we can detect it in the blood. If you're low in calcium, we can detect it in the blood. There is no detecting that you have low serotonin, let's say, in your frontal area or, or what have you. That's not how it works. It's detected from a clinical standpoint, primarily impaired function. But anyway, there's a constellation of symptoms that are described that will make a person meet the criteria for a major depressive episode and
Mhm.
meet criteria for major depressive disorder. So that's how it's determined. That's why I'm saying it's clinical. Now, that said, Dr. Nedley talked about his 10 hits. And so
Mhm.
with his 10 hits, he can do studies to see if maybe you have a toxic level of a metal or something, or so there can be other imbalances that might be detected. For example, sometimes if you have thyroid hormone deficiency, that can mimic, depression. So there are other chemicals that you can check that might be imbalanced and connected to what may appear like depression. But specifically, the chemical imbalance in your brain, to date, to my knowledge, there you cannot check for serotonin deficiency in the brain per se. It certainly is not
Mhm.
something widely available to my knowledge.
Mm.
Um,
Okay, yeah. I'm looking at another one that has to do. How long would it take to balance the brain if you do have a chemical imbalance? I'm just going to paraphrase
right.
it a little. How long would it take to balance the brain through medication? And well, I'm gonna let you
So,
answer, but that would vary from
so,
person to
so,
person.
so traditionally, when using antidepressants, for example, you usually hear between 4 to 6 weeks. You got to give it like 4 to 6 weeks to experience the benefit of the antidepressants. So you
Mhm.
want to be aware of that. Unfortunately, the side effects often start right away. And that's why if we are leveraging those side effects, like let's say sedation, um, or if we know that it tends to make you feel tired and we prescribe it to you at night, it can start working right away sometimes because we're leveraging side effects, and side effects often start right away. But as
Mhm.
far as the beneficial impact, the mood enhancing properties, those
Mhm.
tend to kick in 4 to 6 weeks after starting the medication.
Right. Someone is asking, are there stages, yeah, to depression?
Yeah, much the way there, like stages of grief, are there stages of depression?
Mhm.
What I would say is more and more we're finding that there are different syndromes that are going to make up depression. Right now, we think of depression almost like it's this overarching thing, but it's depression it's just this one thing. And I think more and more, the better we understand depression, we're going to see that there are sub syndromes or syndromes that deal with a specific type of depression. You heard me,
Mhm.
for example, mention that there's a depression with leaden paralysis, where you have trouble wanting to move. Then there's another depression where um, anxiety is a prominent feature of it. So
Mhm.
the bottom line is you're going to find that different depressions have different constellations of symptoms that will vary in their prominence. And I think more and more we're going to see that depression is going to have some different faces. But as far
Mhm.
as stages of depression, I'm not familiar with depression
Yeah,
having stages. So
right.
grief
I mean, I know
has, yeah,
grief has
grief.
stages.
We can talk
Grief
about.
has stages for sure, and I think people can experience mild, moderate to severe depression.
So there's
Uh,
levels of severity is
right,
the things that
right,
we'll talk about.
but but not stages.
Right. All right.
Uh,
Again, let's see.
see what age groups are more likely to be affected by depression.
What groups are more likely to be affected by
Age
depression?
group.
So, yeah, what age group?
Is it age
Oh,
group?
that's a good
Yeah,
question.
what age groups? Yeah. Um, I don't know any studies about any age group about that is more likely to be depressed. I mean, because you see depression in all age groups.
You do. Yeah.
Mhm.
You see it in all age groups. You see it in all genders. So I don't know, but most people are vulnerable to depression in general. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't either.
Diabetes and depression are fruit of a lifestyle that is that
Excuse
is
me.
harming physically and mentally. I presume you're
Mhm.
saying. Vanessa
Mhm.
Grace Cruzada Taylor, thank you so much for that comment.
Mhm.
Let's do a little clarifying. Diabetes and depression are fruits of lifestyle that is harming physically and mentally. So there are people with depression where it has a genetic basis,
Mhm.
where they may not be making poor lifestyle choices and still succumb to depression. That's also the case for diabetes, by the way. Not all diabetes are the result of lifestyle. There are people who there was an immune attack on their islet of Langerhans cells, on their insulin producing cells, destroyed their cells, has nothing to do with their lifestyle, and they subsequently come down with diabetes. So the type of diabetes that is more impacted by lifestyle is diabetes type 2.
Mhm.
And so with type 2 diabetes, it's sort of the cells get burnt out from producing insulin. So the idea being we want we want us to have a certain level of positive regard for those that have the burden of an illness, rather than viewing them all the time as, well, you're just making bad choices, that's why this is happening to you. Something the church can be famous for at times, by the way. um,
Mhm.
and we want to follow Christ's example in terms of loving the sinner, in
Mhm.
terms of being able to look at people's burdens
Mhm.
and having a measure of empathy
Mhm.
for them. So the idea being understanding that what you would often see Christ do is spend time with the person to understand what's going on, because one can really be pushed in the wrong direction with blanket labeling before understanding, as in the case of thinking that all of diabetes is the result of poor lifestyle choices. Not true.
Right.
And depression can't be lumped into that either. It's not all of depression where a person's just making, poor lifestyle choices. So super, super important for you to know.
It's a good question we have here. Can depression occur from psychotic disorder? Psychotic disorder.
It's interesting
Mhm.
because um, there's mild depression, and at the opposite end of it, as it progresses, it can be
Mhm.
associated with psychosis. And let's
Right.
define psychosis for the audience. Psychosis is when you have trouble distinguishing between what's real and what's not real.
Right.
People experiencing a psychotic episode can hear voices that other people in the same room as them can't hear, or
Yeah.
see things other people in the same room can't see, um, and
Hallucinations,
just experience derealization,
hallucinations and delusions. Yeah.
hallucinations,
Mhm.
whether visual, auditory,
Mhm.
tactile, but it's just not there,
Mhm.
and they can also feel paranoid. Anyway, psychosis can be a feature of depression. So especially severe advanced depression, psychosis can be a feature of it.
Mhm.
But a person who's psychotic, so let's say a person who they things were going normal, life looked nice and bright, they're 18, they're 20s, and they've had their first break of psychosis, right? They're developing schizophrenia. As people experience that, drastic, compromise and that shift in their life, of course, that can precipitate some depression. So
Mhm.
you can have some depression that is associated with that psychosis. That's not far
Mhm.
fetched at all. Um,
No, not at all.
so great question. Okay, we got a shout out from Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
We
And I
love
was
that.
just yeah, I was just gonna say that if somebody is experiencing psychosis, I mean, this is where medication has to come into play here. You can't get a therapist to work with somebody in that situation without being on medication. So I just wanted to say that as well.
And I wanted to make this point a little earlier because once you're talking about mental health, of
Mhm.
course, suicide and the topic of suicide comes into the picture. And I wanted to make this comment. It was more pertinent to something that was happening earlier, but I think it's still worth mentioning.
Mhm.
Um, if you think about somebody that you love, if you think about somebody that you love, it is very comforting to know that that person is committed to the long haul and committed to being with you. And let me say it this way: it's comforting to know that that they're not suicidal. It's comforting to know that, hey, you know what? I'm committing myself to not suiciding. I'm going to be there for you. Okay. And I would encourage the audience, um, to the best of your ability. That is a gift you should give yourself. That is a gift as best as you can to try to give yourself that, you know what? These hands, like I understand that someone else may harm me. I get that.
Mhm.
I get that. I understand that someone else may harm me, but to the best of my ability, let me commit my members
Mhm.
to never be involved in the process of harming me. That
Right.
is a gift I can give myself.
Mhm.
That is a commitment I can employ all my mindset and strategy and effort to. Because I'd also love to give my loved ones the gift of the assurance that I'm here for the long haul. I'm gonna battle this because
Mhm.
it certainly is the gift that I appreciate my loved ones giving me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so that can be the power of psychotherapy,
Right.
like going through those kinds of thought patterns and thinking to
Mhm.
how does it make me feel, the assurance that my loved ones have given me, or a
That's right.
particular loved one has given me. How does it's comforting,
Mhm.
and hey, I think, yeah, I want to reciprocate that. So let me reciprocate that, to the people that are depending on me.
Right.
Um,
No, that's
it's
very
a cool
true.
thing. Yeah.
That's very true. I just want to let our audience know that because this is our last program on depression for a little while. I mean, it's Mental Health Mondays. We're going to revisit depression again on different levels, but you can ask questions. If you've watched all four or all three, and today, and you're watching now currently, obviously, you can ask questions of anything that you've heard us discuss about depression. So I just wanted to put it out there so that they can ask those questions. Um, I just really believe that this topic is so important, especially where we are now as a country. Just I use this relatively coming out of a pandemic. I say that just because we are coming out of a pandemic, but the numbers are going up and there's still all these things out there, but just where the country is and how we've experienced what the pandemic has done to our mental health, so many people's mental health, and they've experienced depression and anxiety. I mean, the numbers have gone way up for students, for young adults, and for the general population altogether. And so I just think this is such a very an important topic because the pandemic has, for at least the first half of it, just has had people so isolated, and it caused them to really start to become aware of themselves and just really tap into their thoughts. It's caused people to drink more or to do things that are pretty heavily to where it's just not healthy for them, and so they're becoming aware of how negative their thought processes are, and it has caused a lot of depression in many people. And so I just think it's so important that we're talking about this because depression is a real issue in people's lives, in this not just in this country but from around the world.
Well, I think it's interesting because churches and communities have started to wake up to the importance of mental health and to being comfortable in having the discussion. So
Mhm.
I really applaud both you and Pastor Myers for saying, no, we want to hit this head on. You know,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
on we're gonna on Mondays, one of the central things we're gonna do is we're gonna try to put in place programs that help people where they are, no matter how uncomfortable it is to deal with these topics, no matter how
Mhm.
risky. This is what we want to do for our audience. So I really, and there's talking about it, and then there's really doing it. So I really applaud both you and Pastor Myers for saying, "Hey, now this is what we want to be about." So
Right.
guys, please don't forget to support the Ministry of Living Man so that more programs like this can occur.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
to
go
share
ahead.
that. Well, I was going to say you want to share on your social media this program, and just share it with your friends and loved ones. Even if we only have about 12 more minutes while we're going to be live, but after the program, share it. Send it to somebody that you think would benefit from the things that we've been sharing tonight, and share it on your social media. That really helps to get the word out that we're doing this. Um, we have a new question. You see that what's on the screen now.
At what level would one consider that a
Oh,
person just,
mhm.
oh, good heavens, at what that a person may just be demon possessed? And why isn't this talked about in churches and in a professional level? Let me see who asked that. Trisha McKay. All right, look at Trisha trying to wake the room up. All right, Trisha. Oh,
Yeah.
let's deal with that, Trisha.
Everybody's awake now.
Everybody's awake now. So,
Okay.
so you can imagine part of your job as a psychiatrist, as I mentioned before, your goal is to be perceived as caring and competent. And it is for that reason that it's really the belief of the patient that I'm treating that that's really what's preeminent. That's what I'm going to be working with. And it doesn't serve the therapeutic alliance for me to be championing my beliefs like it's really all about me. No, what's priority is solving the person's issue. That's what's priority, being competent.
Mhm.
And so there are many settings where when in a church setting, in a traditional straight up church setting, talking about demon possession is uncomfortable, is
Mhm.
uncomfortable. Now, why so no one in their right mind is going to embrace a discussion about that and potentially alienate their clients in a context where even in the church setting, they're uncomfortable talking about demon possession. So that's why people don't run to that topic, Trisha. So good question. Let's put it out there. Um,
Mhm.
let's be clear. That's why they don't, because what you're really trying to do is you're trying to gain a therapeutic alliance with that patient that conveys that you're competent and that you care, and you're not coming up with ideas that are not available to a lot of people. Okay. So that's why you see those topics being handled with great care.
Okay. Yeah. How do we manage, or how do we, I'm sorry, not manage, engage with a drug addict to get medication and intervention, especially when their family is in the church community? Um, you specialize in addiction, so I'm definitely gonna
Yeah.
let you take this
So,
one.
so for example, there was an approach that was called the craft model. CRAFT. It was pioneered by researchers in New Mexico, and it was a specific therapeutic strategy that advised family members on the behaviors that had the best likelihood of benefiting a person who was addicted.
Mhm.
Um, and so there are definitely techniques, measures that best support a person in addiction. There's also the book Codependent No More by Melanie or Melody, and I'm not going to think of her last name right
Yeah,
now.
give it either, but
Um,
that's a really good one.
it's like on my bookshelf, so I could literally like find it. But Codependent No More,
I
and
think we
and
could just put in the title,
yeah,
Google it.
what it helps you understand is a lot of times when you're dealing with a person, a loved one whose behavior you're really having trouble with, one knee-jerk approach is to try to do for them what the person needs to do for themselves.
Right.
It's almost like, let me take away your ability to make choices, even for an adult. Like, let me take away this adult's ability to make choices because they're making poor choices.
Mm-hmm.
And it tends to not work, certainly not in the long term.
Right.
And so there is a science, there is a method um, that is higher yield than other methods at times, to help an addict become convinced that, you know what, I need to go and get help. So you'll hear about techniques such as boundary settings. You'll hear about enforcing consequences and letting there be consequences to actions as as important techniques. But the bottom line is you do need to be advised by a skilled mental health practitioner as far as what is the strategy that I'm going to employ to try to help this person. Um, because it is this, you're talking about something that's very complicated, that can be very challenging and super
Very.
difficult.
Mhm.
So how do we engage a drug addict to get medication and intervention, especially when their family is in the church community? So
That's the
my,
same.
go
Oh,
ahead.
I was gonna say, oh yeah, you were just rereading that because that was that same question. But go
Right,
ahead.
right. I just want to make sure I didn't miss any elements of it.
Oh, okay.
Whether
Okay.
they're in a church community or not, um,
Yeah, that
it's
doesn't have anything to do
yeah,
with
yeah,
it.
it's challenging.
Hmm.
But your goal is, your goal is to get clear on you. Your goal is to get clear on you.
Hmm.
What are the boundaries that I'm going to set? Okay? What are
Right.
the boundaries that I'm going to set? And I'm going to say, look, if you do X, then I'm going to do Y.
Mm.
And then following through on that. And then following through on that. So you get all the wisdom you can, you get all the clarity that you can. But ultimately it gets to this space where you say, you know what, if you do X, I'm going to do Y. And
Hmm.
then be prepared to do Y.
Hmm.
Because here's a key thing to understand. Here's a key thing to understand. Um, Even God is ruled by free will.
Right.
I'll say it again.
No, say
Even God is ruled by free will.
freedom of choice.
Even God honors, God, the all powerful God of the universe,
Right.
he honors free will. It's sacred. So people get to make their choice.
Right.
Everyone is entitled to their choice. And I say this within reason, obviously, okay? Um, but the idea just being, when dealing with a person with addictions, we can be tempted to feel like, I want to take away this person's, decision making,
Hmm.
okay? And really what it comes down to is getting great clinical and professional advice so
Hmm.
that you can come to an understanding of what boundaries you need to set, getting clear on the consequences, and then acting on those consequences.
Yes.
So there is like an addiction psychiatrist, an addiction medicine person. There's, obviously psychiatrists. There's internal medicine, that can help you understand what's going on. There's therapists
Yeah,
that
that
can help you.
specialize in addictions. Right.
Right. You
Hmm.
know, and that's important, by the way. That is
Hmm.
important
That
that
is
people have meaningful training in addictions,
very.
because it requires a certain skill set. But then there's also the 12-step groups. So there's CODA. Um,
Hmm.
there's families.
And
There's support for. You might not be an addict, but there's a 12-step group for you, as you try to support an addict.
support.
And I
Right.
can't remember the acronym right now. I know there's CODA. What is
Al-Anon. Al-Anon is
is
for
it?
family.
Right.
Yeah,
What's
Al-Anon
CODA?
is
What
for
does CODA stand for?
family. I'm sorry?
What is CODA? CODA
You
is.
know, I'm not sure what CODA is.
I
But
gotta search it real quick. But
yeah.
there's
Okay.
there's Al-Anon, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. But there are groups that will support you. And I tell you, when humans connect, and all goes well, there's so much information sharing. Oh, well, this person does this. Well, this is what you need to do. Or this is a practitioner that
Mhm.
I found very helpful. Or this is a book that
Mhm.
you need to read on this topic. So there can be incredible, effective sharing of information that can be super, super awesome.
Right.
So just an FYI.
Yes, and we are almost out of time. We just have a couple of more minutes, and we here at Mental Health Mondays, we want to encourage you, if you are, you know, learning things about mental health that you find beneficial, and through that education, you're feeling like, hey, maybe I need to talk with someone. We really encourage you to reach out to a mental health professional in your area. It's so important to find a therapist that you can align with, that you guys can have that very therapeutic relationship with. It's, very important. And so we just want to encourage you that if you're starting to think like, okay, maybe I do need to talk to someone, please reach out to someone in your area. This was our last, today was our last time that we're talking about depression for now. And we have a topic, and Dr. White doesn't know I'm going to do this, but we have a topic that we both said, okay, let's talk about this next week. But before I announce it, that we're actually, going to do it, I kind of want to see what topics that you guys want us to cover that are dealing with mental health, and you can just put it in the chat. I'll wait a few seconds because I know it takes a little bit there's a delay.
And while they're putting it in the chat, thank you, Gina Brower, for Codependent Anonymous.
Codependent Anonymous. Great.
I think that's what CODA stands for. Codependent Anonymous. Thank you so much for that, Gina. And
for that person who just put in, help me find someone in San Jose, that's where I just came from. I know many good therapists in San Jose. If you could, and maybe we could put my email up, because if you will email me, I will give you several referrals for therapists in San Jose. I used to work at the Christian Counseling Center in San Jose. There's probably over 70, 80 Christian therapists there that are amazing.
And I bet you anything they do Zoom too, don't they?
I'm sorry, to do.
They do telehealth. I bet you yeah. So even if you're not in San Jose, but you're in other parts of California,
right?
Her recommendation might be super helpful.
That's true. I definitely have some California leads for you guys. But okay, good. Our emails are up there. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Dr. White. Okay, so we're having all right, trauma. Trauma is good.
Autism in adults.
Okay.
Let's see. Topic: how to relax the mind. I love it. That would be a great discussion.
Yeah.
Spouses married to person with Asperger's. Okay, we're getting some interesting stuff.
Yeah, that's good.
And then, can alcohol bring on mental health issues, especially for teenagers? So you want to be aware that alcohol is considered a depressant. So it's believed that when that the person has depression, for example, you encourage them not to drink. And you also want to be aware that when a person gets accustomed to alcohol, so if they drink with some degree of regularity, when they stop drinking, they can start to experience some anxiety, for example. And that can vary in intensity up to and including severe withdrawal phenomenon, so which you're probably aware of. But I just wanted to highlight that with a person getting accustomed to it, when they stop, when they're away from alcohol, it can actually prime them to have a bit more anxiety. So these are some dynamics that at times you're not aware of. But alcohol is considered a depressant in many ways, and so it can have a role in causing some of the symptoms of depression.
Okay. I think Mavis is the one that's in San Jose. Definitely please email me because I know good therapists that can work with your entire family if you're in a crisis, if the family's in a crisis. So just definitely please email me, and it's on the screen there. But yeah, there's great topics that you guys have put on here. We are going to. Some of these are already on our list of topics, but we're definitely going to be moving in the direction of some of these that you have mentioned. For next week, we are going to be talking about grief. That is what we had decided that we were going to do. So we're going to be talking about grief for next week. So definitely, share this, program, this link with someone that you think could benefit from that topic. Definitely you yourself, please, we invite you to tune back in, because even if you're not going through, and grief doesn't have to be just over someone has passed or died. There's many things that we grieve in this life, right? You grieve There's you can have grief over a relationship that there's been betrayal of some sort. Like you're grieving the idea of that perfect situation, and now you've been hurt, and now you have to move on and you have to heal from that. And so there's just so many different things that we have that we
Yeah.
grieve, and it's
Part,
not just
part
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, part of the worst part is sometimes we're moving so fast, we have not even sensitized ourselves that
Right.
we're experiencing grief. So these
Right.
are some of the wonderful things we're going to talk about next week as we unpack this super relevant issue of grief, especially in
Yeah.
today's society. Over to you, sis.
I was gonna say we have Cindy. Yeah, yeah, well, Cindy just. Just want to give our condolences. She said her husband just passed away on May 1st, and
Oh,
so I'm sorry about that.
sincerest condolences to you, sis.
Uh, Please, our condolences. Definitely tune in next week. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
and
let's talk about some ways of coping.
yes,
And you might be able to share in the chat successful tips that are working for you in dealing with in grief.
that's
So
right.
yeah, we really want to thank you for your
Hmm.
participation, for your questions. I want you to see that they're questions that if you didn't ask, we wouldn't have gone down that road. And I think a lot of people are blessed by some of these responses from your questions. So we really need your partnership.
Yes.
And yeah, we look forward to next week where you can talk about where we can have this discussion, a meaningful discussion on this issue of grief and some tips on how you can cope with grief.
That's right. And definitely partner with us by sharing as well. This is by sharing on your social media, sending this link to your friends that you think that and family members that you think can benefit from this program. Don't forget to tune in the rest of the week. I mean, if you're wanting some health information, which has been amazing, True Health Tuesdays is tomorrow, so you're not going to want to miss that. And hey, if you want our prayer team to pray over a situation that you're going through, or you just want to be uplifted, definitely join our Power Wednesdays. And Dr. Pandit is always just giving us that knowledge that he's taken so much time to study how that does God really exist, and he has come out of that being able to prove the existence of God in a way that is just amazing. So definitely in on for that on Thursdays. And we invite you to join us for our worship service, which is every Saturday at 11 a.m. Central. That's when we began. And actually, Dr. White, you're going to be on with us this week for Sabbath School. So we're looking forward to that. So definitely tune in then as well. But we definitely look forward to seeing you guys next week. We hope that you have a blessed week, and that we will be able to just answer your questions next time and then give you helpful information and tips on how to deal with grief. So until then, God bless you. Have a good night. Thank you for watching.
Always a pleasure, sis.
All right, you too. All right, bye
Everyone.
bye.
Bye, everyone.